Purchasing a used cinema or television camera. Good morning. My name is David. I'm a freelance director of photography. I shoot business and broadcast videos. This marks week 7 for me on the road. Since the start of the year, I've been traveling. I get home for 2 days, repack, shuffle gear, back out on the road. Got up at 4:30 this morning to do live shots for TV news, and Russia invaded Ukraine last night, so we got bumped and removed from the morning lineup. So I went out, had breakfast, and figured now's a good opportunity to run through some of my advice on buying a used camera. Now these are just going off of memory and experience here. I'm sure I will have forgotten some things as well as things that haven't occurred to me, so please, if you think of additional items, please add them in the comments below. Okay, so this is my Sony FX9. I currently have 2 of these. This is my first camera. Purchased it new in December 2019. I'm not sure what the hours are on it. We'll check as we run through it. But surface level is, I guess, there are maybe 3 different primary sources for buying a used higher-end camera. One is private party, probably the highest risk, but you also may get the best deal. 2 would be through a broker, and the third one would be my remanufactured and sold by the manufacturer. Okay, so the advantages to buying directly from the manufacturer are obvious. It's going to come with a new warranty. The factory has gone through it and signed off on everything. You know you're going to be good to go, and they're going to back you up if you have a problem. However, with that said, you're also going to pay the highest premium. Next would be through a broker. I've purchased a few cameras using brokers. They typically source from rental companies, big broadcast operations, as well as the equipment manufacturers. The advantage to a broker is they know everybody in the market, and when you need something and you need it FedExed immediately, they'll find it for you. And again, you pay a little bit of a premium, but you know you're getting quality equipment from a respectable source, and it's also going to be legitimate. Now, if you're purchasing one of the higher end cameras that's specialized in sort of bleeding edge technology, I recommend having a service center or the manufacturer go through it and evaluate it. It's just like buying, say, a used high-end sports car. They're pushing the bleeding edge of technology, and there's very likely going to have some issues. So as an example, I purchased my second Amira through a broker, and it came from a rental house that was based in Hawaii. And I placed my deposit, and then I had the camera FedEx to the RE Service Center in California, and for between $350 and $500, the service center went through the camera, came up with a list of issues. There were a couple little minor things. The seller paid to have those fixed, and then once that was all taken care of, I wired my final payment, and then the camera was FedEx from the service center directly to me. Now, I've gone through that same process when purchasing private party. I bought my Canon 30-300 zoom used from a production company, and in that case the lens came from Florida, and the seller, the owner of the company, flew to California. We met at BandPro Film and Video, and I had Stuart from Focus Optics. I scheduled an appointment, and he evaluated the lens while the seller and I went out for breakfast and talk shop. And same thing, it came back. Couple minor issues. There was a little nick in the corner of the front element, and the focus tracking was just a hair out. So like at 300 mil, if you get focus set at I forget now, 25 feet full wide, it was still 25 feet on the witness marks, but it was like the other side of the paint line, just a teeny little difference. I wasn't concerned with the nick in the front element, and the focus thing, I mean, 10x zoom, that's a very minor variation. So I didn't have either item addressed, and I was still happy to pay the agreed upon price. I didn't ask for a renegotiate to address those 2 minor items, but getting that sign off from the lens tech in person gave me full confidence I wasn't going to have any problems. And now I think it's been about 5 years, and the lenses work great. It was like new when I took possession of it, and I've put it through its paces. It's been out in the dust and in the environment, working hard and earning income. Okay, next, warranties. In the case with ARRI, and I believe Canon will do this as well, when you have them evaluate it, you have an option to purchase a new warranty. I've always just gambled that I'm going to be okay, and I haven't purchased a new warranty, and I'm happy when there's a problem I just kind of pay out of pocket. Fortunately, I've never had a big cost item like a bad sensor or a burned out viewfinder. Consider requesting a proof of purchase receipt from the seller. So in the case of my 30-300 private party purchase from a production company, I requested it, they provided it. It was from a known reseller in the New York area, and it was in the name of the company that I was purchasing from. So that proved legit. And the sales receipt had the serial number listed, which of course matched the copy that I purchased. Now, when buying from a broker, I'm less concerned about that, because if it's a known reputable broker, and in each case when I've purchased, the seller has been a known company. Working from the front side of the camera, and just kind of a physical evaluation of the condition, starting with the lens mount. Now, obviously in this case, I've got a lens adapter and a lens, and yeah, I know it's not supported. I don't support my servo zoom. I've had this particular copy for about 5 years, various cameras, never had a problem. If I start running accessories, motors, matte box, putting more weight out front, then I'll put the rods and bridge in. But for just like documentary, ENG mode, less is best. I do need to support this lens mount. This MovCam adapter, which I just picked up, does not line up with this adapter, which I purchased on Amazon. I needed it next day. I got it on Prime. So I think I'm going to switch to the wooden camera mount, which I'm told lines up with this MovCam support, because there is a little bit of flex at the body. I'm not sure if that reads on camera. But anyway, take a look at your lens mount. Here, I'm going to pop the lens off. So take a look at the physical condition of the lens mount. The mechanical mating surfaces, how dinged and scuffed up are they, how dirty. You can see mine is pretty dusty at the moment. And this is, again, is from 5 weeks of working out in the field. I haven't cleaned this. I've also, really, the only time the lens comes off is once a day. End of the day, I case the lens, cap the camera. If the camera has internal NDs, cycle through each filter and work a flashlight. Backlight is best, and look for dust particles inside the optical assembly, inside the area where you can't manually clean it. I had this issue on one of my Amiras where dust had accumulated on the internal filters, and it cost me about $3,500 US to have the factory service the optical block. If there are communication contacts on the lens mount, test that, make sure it reports and controls an external lens. I had a red camera with bad internal pins. If the camera includes a lens, same thing, inspect your optical elements. You can see I've got a bunch of dust on my rear elements. I'll clean it when I wrap on this project, but I'm not going to worry about it right now out in the field. And with lenses, same thing. Like, the bigger concern is nicks, chips, scratches, particularly on the rear element because it's closer to the focal plane. This is a great example because my lens is filthy, but again, dirt's not necessarily an issue. If there's dirt on interior elements, that is problematic because that means the lens has to be disassembled and serviced by a professional. Front element, same idea. I'm generally less concerned with the condition of a front element. They typically have swirl marks, cleaning marks on the coatings. There may be a nick somewhere. If it's near the perimeter, I'm not too concerned. A front element replacement is not that big of a deal. My 30-105 Canon compact zoom, I had the front element replaced, and it was parts and labor $750 US. That was a couple of years ago. Rear element, I don't know, I haven't done one, but I would assume it's similar. If it's a current lens or one that parts are still available, it's probably about the cost. Figure, under $1,000 for a standard lens. Run through the action. This is not a calibrated lens with hash marks for focus positions, so I can't really test its repeatability, but I can zoom through to check back focus. And this has got adjustable back focus as well as macro. Run through each of those. Irises on servo zooms tend to be the ones that get gummed up first with dust and dirt. It'll feel a little crunchy or grindy. Gives you an idea just how much the camera's been out in the dust or possibly at the beach. Look for corrosion marks. Now, since I lived near the Pacific Ocean for many years, a lot of my equipment has got little signs of corrosion just from the salt that's in the air. That's actually just a wear mark on that screw. But this lens, Looks clean. Test your zoom port. Anything that has a frequent mating cycle are the items you want to test because they wear out first. So here's the remote port for, I believe that's for zoom. Check your servo gauge and gauge switch. Again, you're just for wear or anything that feels out or off. Check the connector for damage, bent pins. Cycle through the action on zoom. Make sure the record switch is still functional and doesn't feel highly worn. And if it is worn, you just got to make a judgment call on whether or not you're still comfortable. Moving on to the EVF, check all the bracketry, make sure it's solid and square. With the loop, the first thing you want to look for is any burn marks from sunlight, the magnifying glass on the ant effect. This seemed to be far more common with the older traditional 2/3 inch cameras in the old days where the screen was quite a bit smaller, so greater magnification on the diopter and loop, far more susceptible to burn marks, and you typically see it in the corners, melted plastic or damage to the screen. So again, I'm not powered up yet, I'm just looking for physical damage. I'm not too worried about dust and fingerprints. On most camera equipment nowadays, the eyepiece optics are plastic based as opposed to glass, so they have a tendency to have a lot of swirl scratches from cleaning. I've learned from the old timers to I clean as little as possible. When I work with someone new and they pull my lenses out, they're always horrified at the amount of dust that's accumulated, but I'm going for longevity. If it's not affecting the image in a way that I can visually see, I am not at all concerned with dust. I want this equipment to have the longest possible shelf life, because the longer the lifespan of the gear, that's more profit that goes into my bank account. Check the mechanics on the diopter adjustment, cycle through your user buttons, make sure they're functional. On the body of the camera, I don't test every button, but it's a good idea to test the ones that are used all the time. So on the Sony cams, the menu button gets a lot of use, record button, ND adjustments, run through your audio faders, selector switches, just make sure they function and don't feel worn to the point of immediate failure. Check the cards. If the camera comes with cards, I'd format, record, and play back on each, as well as check the ports to make sure they're functional. So years ago, I bought a used Sony EX3 off a guy on Craigslist. I cycled through all of these checks. I didn't have a checklist with me and I missed one item. So I recommend have this on paper because you're gonna be in sensory overload when you're on the side of a road or in a parking lot doing the exchange. On that EX3, I didn't test the SDI out and it was broken, non-functional. Ended up costing me a couple $100. Fortunately, I was still living in the Los Angeles area at the time and there were several local service options. So test all your connectors, particularly the video out ports, HDMI port, XLR inputs, external power connector, battery port. Okay, moving on to the electronic side, powering up. First thing I do is I check for hot pixels, dead pixels, and if it's to the point where at some point as a camera and sensor system ages, the quantity of dead pixels exceeds the camera's ability to mask. You've overfilled the buffer. Best way to test that is a record check, but first just gain the camera up to its highest gain or ISO setting. I'm going to close the iris, and on this camera, because it's dual ISO, I'm going to go into high ISO mode, base high, and then you probably can't see it on camera. I'm going to look in the loop. I'm just looking for any dead pixels or weird anomalies on the sensor or like a burn mark from a laser strike. Now I also record a test clip and then I play it back on a PC where I can magnify the image and also do a color correction adjustment to lift the pedestal to really get into the blacks and understand the condition of the sensor. But if there are no white hot pixels or dead spots that are just drawing my attention. You're going to see little flaws and anomalies. That's just the nature of the technology. You just want to look for major issues. Now, if you find something, before you freak out, run a proper black balance or sensor calibration, repeat the test, because that may solve it. Next, it's taking a look at the hours. Now, there's no hard and fast rules on what is too many hours, particularly on the very high-end kit and things that are designed for broadcast television. In a studio environment, typically the cameras are on 24/7, and so it's not really indicative of the wear of the camera by how many hours it's accumulated. But if it's a field cam, it gives you a good idea of just how much time it's been out in the field and subject to all the physical wear. So this camera, it's now mid to late February 2022. I bought this December 2019. I've only got 395 hours. Now this camera sat for, I didn't really use it much, only a handful of days in 2020. It didn't really pick up momentum for me until the middle of 2021. So I've really only been working consistently with this camera for maybe 8 months. Whew. So with that said, I think the highest hour camera I've purchased was the EX3. I have 2 of those. I bought them both used, and they were event cameras, and I use them for events, and I think they're both between 2,000 and 2,500 hours. And again, that's because those cameras would go out to an event, sit on a riser powered up a week at a time. And my second Amira, I believe I had about 1,200 hours when I purchased it. And I think both of my Amiras now are over 2,000 hours. A few items I've missed that have resulted in a repair bill after a used purchase. On a Sony camera, the remote zoom port is a integrated lens, and the external rocker zoom demand control switch, the port was bad, and I had to have someone repair it. They just replaced the connector. I think it was like 2 hours of service. It was not a big deal, just minor inconvenience first time I was out in the field with the camera. I couldn't get the remote zoom working. On another, the remote port, bad. And then Amira number 2, even though I sent it to the ARRI service center, they missed it. The 3-pin run stop connector on the right hand side of the camera is bad. And the situation was, I guess that 3-pin, there is no industry standard for the pin order, and the voltage polarity can be reversed. So the explanation I got was somebody probably plugged an accessory in that had the opposite polarity of how the camera was wired, and there is not a fuse on that particular camera. So one of the main boards on the camera has to be replaced to get that port operational again, and I think the quote I got was almost $5,000. So I've just, through the years, I've gotten by without the remote run stop. Every once in a while I get a camera assistant on a commercial project who is bummed that they can't run stop the camera from their Preston or ARRI remote focus kit. I think that covers it. Refer to the comments below for anything I missed. I'm off to a cattle ranch to shoot a story on some cows that are currently quarantined. Thanks for watching.